What's this supposed to be for?
So the
Information?
Call this meeting to order. Darrell, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business, to approve the minutes of the August 23rd, 2010 meeting, work session.
Make a motion, we approve the August 23rd minutes
Second.
as written.
It's been moved by Butch, seconded by Charlie, that we approve the minutes of the August 23rd, 2010 meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Second, the August 23rd, 2010 work session.
I move the August 23rd work session minutes as written.
Second.
It's been moved by Butch, seconded by Charlie, that we approve the minutes of the August 23rd, 2010 work session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Moving on to the August 23rd, 2010 non-public work session.
Move we approve the non-public work session minutes of August 23rd.
Second.
It's been moved by Charlie, seconded by Butch, that we approve the minutes of the August 23rd, 2010 non-public work session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Darrell?
I'll seconding that. Minutes? Did I? Bush definitely made the motion.
Yeah, Butch made the motion.
I voted in favor, for sure.
Voted
It's,
in favor. Darrell's
I don't recall seconding.
not sure if he remembers being the one who seconded.
Yeah. Anybody?
I'll check it tomorrow on my notes.
Check the notes.
Okay.
Okay, so shall we vote on that at the next meeting then? Get confirmation?
Ray thinks he seconded.
Ended up
Okay,
seconding
Ray
that.
believes he seconded, so if we can amend those minutes to show Ray seconding. And again, vote all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, those minutes are approved.
Catch.
Moving on to the August 31st, 2010 work session.
I move that we approve the minutes of August 31st work session.
Second.
It's been moved by Darrell, seconded by Charlie, that we approve the minutes of the August 31st, 2010 work session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. And finally, the August 31st, 2010 non-public work session.
Oh, that's the revision I was talking about.
Oh, okay, that was the one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was looking for.
I move that we approve the non-public minutes of August 31st with the revision that Ray Gosney seconded that motion.
Okay. Do I have a second? Seconded by, moved by Darrell, seconded by Charlie, that we approve the minutes of the August 31st, 2010 non-public work session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Announcements. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. Regular meetings at 6 p.m. on Monday, September 27th, 2010, and Tuesday, October 12th, 2010. Work review sessions prior to the regular meetings will start at 5 p.m. Work session meetings will also be held on an as-needed basis as determined by the Select Board members, and there are none currently scheduled outside of the dates just announced. All of the above meetings will be held in the Town Hall unless otherwise posted. Primary elections will take place in the Plymouth Elementary School gym tomorrow, Tuesday, September 14, 2010, from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Weather observations for the month of August are available in the Town Hall. Agenda review, personnel, dates. Do we have any visitors? No. Correspondence. Michael and Terry Domings, Cumming Hill Road conditions. We have a Town of Plymouth Health Safety Nuisance Complaint Request Form entered by the Demings, and it states that road conditions in front of our home produce large amounts of dust and dirt, which is kicked up by vehicles when they go by. Highway Department comes out to spray the road, but it doesn't work for long. The road should be paved. It is so bad here, laundry can't be hung outside and cars can't stay clean. The address is 74 Cummings Hill Road in Plymouth. So thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Domings, and this will be
But this will be given to the Highway Safety
to the
Committee.
Highway Safety Committee for their consideration. Okay, and next we have, is there any discussion or questions about that? Next, PSU notification of a change in employment status for John J. Guarnieri from part-time police officer to full-time police officer to fill an existing position. And
Good evening, everyone.
Doyle?
At the town administrator's recommendation, I had Vice President Rick Barth forward that correspondence to you just to make you aware of the change in his job status. I'm happy to report that since you approved his appointment as a part-time police officer a year ago, he's now a town resident, lives on Merrill Street with his family.
Right next door.
If we gained a full-time employee, you gained a new full-time resident. He will be performing basically the same functions he has for the past year, except that he will be attending the full-time police academy in Concord in January. And at that time, after which he'll go through a regular field training officer program and be worked into our regular schedule as full-time police officer.
Excellent.
Okay.
Very good.
Good. And we need to sign this appointment since he's
Right, he's already been appointed.
already been appointed.
That's just
so
a transition.
This is just ours to...
Watch out.
Okay, and next on the agenda, under appointments, we also have a PSU appointment of full-time police officer Jill A. Carroll, approved by Plymouth Police Chief Steve Temporino.
That's correct, Ms. Scarborough. Jill is a May 2010 graduate of Plymouth State University. Graduated magna cum laude
I did, sir.
in 3.5 years. She's been a student officer for the last 3 years and has attended for the last 3 consecutive summers the New Hampshire Police Cadet Academy at Hester College. She's originally from Stratford and is living in Alexandria right now. We feel that it's extremely beneficial, not just to the university, but to the town, to have a student who's already used to our community to move into a position like this and to be able to begin her career here in Plymouth. And I know Jill is going to do a great job. She's a very outgoing person, and obviously her youth and ability to relate to the students is going to be a real plus for us. So I would ask the board to please approve her appointment. Bill, you want to come on?
So you're practically a full-time resident here then? You've been here, what, 3.5 years?
I have, yep. I came up in 2007. I lived on campus for my first 2 years, and then my 3rd year I moved off campus to Alexandria, where I currently live now.
Good.
Very impressive credentials that Chief
Yes.
Doyle has listed for you. That's terrific. And thank you for choosing to stay in Plymouth. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Must have made your parents happy, 3.5 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're definitely happy with that. So.
All right.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the full-time position for Jill A. Carroll to the PSU.
So it's been moved by Butch, seconded by Charlie, that Ms. Carroll's appointment be approved. All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Good to have you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
We didn't get a chance the other night. We were both yada yada.
Okay. Thank you very much, board.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Moving on to chairman's comments. I just have a couple of things I'd like to mention. One is on September 25th, 2010, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the Plymouth Police Department will take place in what is being called the National Take Back Initiative, which is basically a program that's sponsored by the Drug Enforcement Administration, a one-day collaborative effort with state and local law enforcement agencies to remove potentially dangerous controlled substances from our nation's homes. So our police department will be collecting any pharmaceutical, prescription or over-the-counter, at the police department located at 334 Main Street in Plymouth. The drugs will then be turned over to the DEA and destroyed. Intravenous solutions, injectables, syringes, and aerosol inhalers are not going to be accepted. And this program is completely anonymous. All efforts will be made to protect the anonymity of those disposing of medications. No questions will be asked, and no requests for identification will be made by the police. So if anyone wants to clear out their medicine cabinets of expired prescriptions or unused prescriptions, this is an opportunity to do it and make sure that those prescriptions aren't getting into the water supply as well, which is a problem. One other item, the Flying Monkey has extended an invitation to the first Plymouth Green Drinks, which is going to be on Tuesday, September 21st at 5:30 p.m. And this is a program for anyone interested in talking about environmental stuff with anyone and everyone. Bring your friends, neighbors, and co-workers. And it's really, the purpose is to network for business or pleasure, to learn more, to teach others, and have fun. And this is no charge for admissions, but there will be a charge for your bar tab in food, should you choose to attend. And again, that's sponsored by the Common Man family of restaurants. Okay, we have no approved purchase orders, new purchase orders. Paul? Accept bid and approve purchase order from D.L. Nash.
And Chair, as you know, the police department is putting in for repairs down at the PD, and they initially came in with an estimate of around $24,000 and was asked to put it out for bid. We put it out for bid, and Mr. David Nash came in at $15,996. And we had our building inspector, Brian Murphy, go over the bid process and also compare the bids collectively, apples to apples. And this was the middle bid, and this is the bid that we're proposing to go forward with.
Right. Do I have any questions, comments? We've discussed this at our work session, so.
I move that we approve the D.L. Nash bid
Order 15.
for $15,966.
Did you second it, Charlie?
Yeah.
Okay, it's been moved by Darrell, seconded by Charlie, that we accept the D.L. Nash bid for renovations to the police department in the amount of $15,966. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The bid is accepted. Next, we have Casino Clogston, Lakes Region Fire Apparatus, Inc., Engine 4 Pump Rebuild for $8,720.
Chief?
That's going to be engine 3.
Engine 4.
Yeah, it's a typo.
Just explain that.
Yep.
Yeah, the second page says engine 3.
Yes, it does. It's a typo. It's our engine 3. It's our frontline piece. Last year, during its annual pump test, it just barely passed, and we were told by the company that did the pump testing that you may want to budget for a rebuild on it, which we did. Since then, we went down, pump tested it this year on its annual time frame, and it did fail miserably. So we went out and we got a couple of extra quotes from 2 other companies that do pump rebuilds, and there's a couple of issues with the other prices that we got. They're all within a few $100s of one another. The other 2 companies would have to come to our station to do the work. We really don't have the room to have this torn all apart and on the floor at our station, for one. Second is that these prices were best case scenario. They talk about this spray welding that they would do to try to rehab the parts. Lakes Region Fire replaces what they need to with all original equipment. It is our frontline piece. I would really not like to have, you know, a cob job. I'm not going to say cob job, but a shady repair that I haven't heard a lot of good things about. Okay, and this is worst case scenario, so it may come in underneath. And the other 2 were best case scenario. And Lakes Region Fire Apparatus is the one that performs all our pump tests and does a large majority of all our work anyways. So, and we did have another party do a pump test just to confirm his findings, and it did confirm that. So that's why we're looking to...
So how long will this be out of service?
About a week. And we'll take it right down to his shop. I'll drive it down there, drop it off, and then if anything changes, the parts will be there. I can go down there and view them, take a look at them. There's a lot of unknowns, because the only way they're going to find out exactly what's going on is to drop that pump right out of the truck. So
This was inspected and it failed?
a pump test was done correctly. Yes, and it failed.
By...
Lakes Region Fire, and also the other vendor, Perkins, that we contacted.
Or did the state, was it like a state inspection or anything?
No, this is a separate, it is a pump test to make sure that this pump is delivering the amount of GPMs, gallons per minute, that it's supposed to.
Got it.
So what do we do, when you said this was on your frontline equipment, right? What do we do?
We run with our engine 4, and we still have engine 2, and then we just put other departments on a little bit quicker timetable as far as calling them out. So if it's a reported building fire, we'll probably bring somebody from Holderness or Ashland in to help make up for the that one truck being down.
Do I have a motion that we accept?
Make a motion that we accept the price for the rebuild on engine 3 for $8,720.
Second.
Moved by Butch, seconded by Charlie, that we accept $8,720 quote for the engine 3 pump rebuild. All those in favor?
Aye. And you said engine 3? You did?
Yeah.
Engine 3.
Yeah.
Engine 3.
Would you like me to just cross that out on this purchase order and put 3 on top of it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Spending money tonight, Charlie.
And again, Casino Clogston, Weatherstrong, change of door height for the new ladder truck in the amount of $7,000.
This was something that we knew was going to happen with the purchase of this new ladder truck. It will fit in, but we'd like to give ourselves a little insurance. You know, we saved about $150,000, $200,000 on the purchase of this truck, so I contacted Weatherstrong and tried to get some estimates on what it was going to cost earlier in the spring. He came in and actually had a real hard time finding masons that wanted to touch that brick facade. 2 of them didn't return his call. We got another price from another door company that we've done business with in the past. They gave us a price on just elevating that door, but the masonry work would have to be, you know, through us. We'd have to find somebody, work with them logistically. It's a lot better if I know that the hole's going to be, the front's going to be changed, and that the door company's going to be right there to work with the masonry company. Subsequently to that, we tried to find masons that would come and take a look and give us a price to give the competitive edge. And one company came in and said that he was booked until the spring. I had another company that came in, took a look at it, and he said that he would get back to us with an estimate. And that was a while ago, and 2 phone calls, and I still haven't seen anything. This is a time-sensitive matter. We'd like to get it done before it gets really cold, and that would affect the cost of it. So Weatherstrong has the mason, a subcontractor, so we would be dealing with one company. And when the door is removed, the mason would come in, add the extra 6 stitches. He would go ahead and make the adjustments on the door.
Which door?
And this is funds that we did carry over from last year's budget.
When's the new truck due?
It should be here in the end of February, right around that time frame.
Funds from that 50,000.
From the building maintenance last year, because he gave me the rough estimate, and we did the carryover for this purpose.
Right.
So
Which door is it?
it is, as you're looking at it, it's going to be the number 3 bay. And there was a little more work to do on one of the ends. And right now, the old ladder truck is currently parked in it. We will have to take one of our trailers and move them out, and I've got some estimates on a place to store that where we can get to it, you know, anytime we need to for responses and whatnot. And that was with, right now, RJ Crowley. They have a storage facility just up on Main Street that they were willing to work with us on a price. And it's just during the cold months while we figure out what we're doing with the station.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Darrell, seconded by Charlie. We approve the purchase order for Weather Strong to change the door height at the fire station to accommodate the new ladder truck in the amount of $7,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Purchase order is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Send them up later. Send them up later. Deals.
Okay, moving on to committee reports. Ray.
To try to facilitate both efficiency and comprehension, you have in front of you the latest draft of the most recent meeting of the Plymouth Energy Commission, and I'll point out to you 2 or 3 significant items that you may have others that come to mind after you have a chance to read through this, but the first is there is a follow-up coming out of the Safety Buildings Committee in which there is the desire to engage the Energy Commission at some point with the work of that committee to ensure that the expertise that lies within that Energy Commission is brought to bear in looking at the building envelope or building envelopes associated with whatever proposals come out of the Safety Buildings Committee to ensure that we're getting the most efficient design that we can out of that. How we move forward with that, I'll try to facilitate that discussion between the chair of the the Safety Buildings Committee and the Energy Commission. There was no thoughts as to whether or not that's something that should be going on at this point. The thought was we ought to just plant the seed and make sure it occurs at the appropriate time. The next is, if you look at the next sheet, there is a follow-on to an action that the Plymouth Selectboard took last spring, in which we took the recommendations that were coming forth from the Energy Committee about the initial representatives that would comprise the Energy Commission. Since that time, discussions have taken place at the Energy Commission and the recognition that it would be most appropriate to actually have rotations occur with terms associated with the representatives. And you have in front of you, extracted from their minutes, their recommendations for the 7 regular members and the 1 alternate, so that we actually establish a rotation, so that we would have 2 individuals that would rotate initially for 3 years, and then we'd have 3 at 2 years, and then 2 at 1 year, and with the alternate actually rotating on a 1-year basis initially.
These are described as term limits. Are we looking at restricting people from serving consecutive terms if they are interested and so desire? I think limits might not be the word.
That's why that word initial was thrown in there. We were thinking it was applying to the individual. Your question is well served. They did have that discussion, and they really didn't come to a conclusion as to whether or not it should be term limits associated, or, if you will, multiple terms, so that it's understanding that you have a sunset. The belief is that with the workload that comes along with the responsibility of being part of this commission, rotation is going to occur just because of that.
Probably. But we could, I mean, would it change it too much if it just said recommendations for initial terms? Oh.
I think that would be appropriate. That would be in line with the thinking that the group discussed. I just pulled this right out of their minutes.
Yeah. Does anyone else thoughts on that?
Good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't know if that's something we have to actually vote on, or...
It's just a recommendation that you'll take back.
Yes.
Yeah. I think
They would decide. Is that? They would decide that, or we would decide that now?
we did vote to approve the membership, so
As long as it stays within the parameters of how the commission is supposed to operate, you don't have to re-vote.
Yeah,
They don't have term limits in their bylaws yet?
can't remember for sure. I have to go back and look. I don't think there was anything about limits associated or terms at all in the approval. It was just the number of individuals that we focused
The
on.
commission hasn't written bylaws yet.
They have.
They're going to
Yeah.
draft a bylaws that we've,
The bylaws do call for rotations to occur with terms.
So at some point, you will be approving the bylaws.
Right.
So if this is is this part of the process of creating the bylaws?
The bylaws, the commission itself has already reviewed and established and approved their own bylaws. Wasn't aware that, and maybe that's efficiency on my part, we needed to bring those back to this group for approval.
I think we do because
Right.
it's a commission, not a committee. It's something
Right.
that was established by the legislative body, so yes. And then,
I'll work with Paul to look into that, and if that is something that needs to happen, we will make it happen soon.
Right.
okay. Other than that,
The other thing is something we've already made use of. I had indicated that I would bring to the entire select board the 7 sites that, at the end of August, that were currently under consideration. Associated with that is the most recent timeline that has just been revised to reflect the current reality and the shortness of some of the various steps associated with that current reality, so that you actually have a Gantt chart here with working backwards from town meeting with the various steps to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible and also engaging as many of the stakeholders in the town as possible. So that gives you a sense of what that looks like. And I'm saying all these, Butch, with the understanding you're going to jump in if I'm not doing justice. The last 2 items, the first item is the agenda. I have gotten permission from the Plymouth Regional Chamber to every month go ahead and share with you their agenda of their most recent meeting, so you get a sense of the full scale of what they're entertaining and what's falling on their plates. And the last item is feedback that appeared in this past week's Record Enterprise that I was not at, nor was the representative from the chamber, where the representatives essentially at the executive level of Main Street discussed what they believe should be their future and their purpose. And this conveys the only feedback that I've received from them on that subject. There was discussion at the chamber meeting this past Friday morning, having seen this in Thursday's paper, that there needs to be some further discussions between those 2 organizations, because there has been significant efforts most recently by the chamber to accomplish a number of the things that Main Street is pointing to provide assistance with business activities as a result of the current economic situation.
that was actually in the business section of this week's paper, all that the chamber is doing and all that they're willing to do to assist local businesses, even those, as I read it, who aren't necessarily chamber members, that can get assistance through them. So
Be happy to answer any questions on any one of those organizations.
I talked to Kathy Hilliard today. The library construction or renovations, additions are underway. They had to exchange some materials, but they're moving forward with some balancing out of less of this, more of that, but same footprint.
Butch?
I don't have anything to the school board. I've got to get back into their cycle of school board meetings, so I didn't attend any this last, so we'll get back into the Monday nights.
I think it's tonight, yeah.
Yeah, so tonight, so.
Charlie?
Nothing. The last Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District meeting was held on the Tuesday. We had our last meeting, so I wasn't able to attend it, and there have been no planning board meetings since our last session.
New business. Discuss traffic flow direction on High Street. Chief Temporino.
Madam Chair, in the absence of the chief, I recommend that we would just read Mr. Barker's request, and then the chief would meet with the Highway Safety Committee, just as he will on that other concern that was brought up on Cummings Hill Road, and then report back to the Board of Selectmen. with his recommendations. And this will give the board an opportunity for me to bring any questions back to the chief regarding this matter.
Is it possible to do what Charlie's asking for without making...
I guess we should read it first.
Let me read this. It's this letter from Charlie Barker, 26 High Street, Plymouth, New Hampshire. Chief, I am writing this letter to request that High Street at the corner of Langdon Street and High Street have a do not enter sign posted heading west onto High Street. There are several reasons I would like to have this done. First, for the safety of the children that play on and around the neighborhood on the west side of Langdon Street. There are over 20 kids in this neighborhood. They range in age from 1 to 16. The street has become a way for people to cut around downtown, and I have seen an increase in traffic at high rates of speed coming up High Street. Secondly, by changing the traffic pattern, I hope this would reduce the number of cars that travel through this residential area, including Emerson Street as well. At your convenience, I would like to talk with you more about what the steps are to make this happen. Thank you for taking the time to address this matter, Charlie Barker.
And the reason why I made that recommendation earlier was the fact that different entities, like PSU has a representative, Tammy Hill is on that committee to co-chair with Steve, and I think they need to discuss that as
at the safety committee and then get back to us.
Because it will have an impact on the university also.
Charlie, what was your question?
I'm trying to figure out if he's proposing we make High Street one way.
One way up.
Yeah.
Up. One way going east, right?
One way going west.
Langdon and Highway.
At Langdon.
At Langdon.
I can think of about 10 other streets that have the same situation, so.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way to clear up the traffic on the...
Well, the safety
Main
committee there will come back with a report.
Yep. We will get the safety committee report.
One way going the other direction.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. New Hampshire Electric Cooperative Agreement for Distribution Services.
Before we begin discussions, I'll step aside.
Thank you. The records show that Ray Gosney is recusing himself from this discussion. This involves the New Hampshire Electric Cooperative, his employer.
Madam Chair, as you know, we're doing the renovations at the Peace Library, and there was some unforeseen electrical work that has to be done by the electric co-op, and the cost of this work will be approximately $9,700. And the library does not have that in their budget, so we were trying to find a way that we could finance that cost without having money on hand. I contacted Bill Johnstone, our representative at the co-op, and he gave us 3 alternatives, 2 of which did require us to have money in hand. So the third alternative was that when they have projects like this that are going to produce extra electricity being sold to the co-op, that the co-op can come together with a program to draw down that dollar amount. And what'll happen is the library's bill is going to go up substantially with the new wing added on, and they will use the difference in the payments that she currently has to draw down that $9,700. As long as that meets that requirement within a 4-year period, the co-op supports these kind of projects all the time. They estimated that the extra cost of electricity at the library will draw this down in a 1-year period. So we do not have to come up with the money. They will just use the extra money that we pay as a payment towards the $9,700. And we would have to pay that electricity anyway. It's like a line of credit.
Very good.
And
All right.
So first of all, I'd like to thank the co-op for having
Yes,
such a
that's-
program.
that is-
Absolutely.
We did not
Be
have
able
that kind
to-
of money.
Definitely appreciate the co-op's willingness to work with us on this and make it possible to get this work done without having to figure out where $9,700 is going to come from. All right, and did we
I'll make a
Need to
motion.
vote on that, right?
vote on
I'll
that?
make a motion to, for the agreement for distribution service from the co-op for the library.
Second.
Been moved by Butch, seconded by Charlie, that we accept this agreement for distribution services. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agreement is approved.
And now I hope the telephone company's listening and will do the same thing, because we have to move the telephone pole across the street, and that was unanticipated cost.
Okay, and moving on, duck race request waiver of permit.
Mr. Berman?
Well, they've filled out an application. The duck race is 11 o'clock this Saturday. It's going to be a fairly significant event in town. There's a lot of, Common Man is putting up the food concession, the proceeds of which will go to Rotary. And I would like the town to consider, as a Rotary member, waiving the fee. It's $25.
Does the, have they filled out, I think, they filled out, I think, for the duck race, little permit.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I thought I saw that. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that last week.
And what is the duck race raising money for again?
Pardon?
What is this? Is this a fundraiser for what purpose?
Well, it's a fundraiser for Rotary, but most of the money that Rotary raises goes toward scholarships. That's their ongoing expense. I think they give 6 or 8 scholarships to kids from Plymouth.
I was going to say that the money was being raised for scholarships, and also we've waived it in the past.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion that we waive the permit fee for the duck race this year?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Charlie, seconded by Butch. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The permit fee is waived. White Mountain Gateway, discussion and decision on renewal. Economic Development Corporation.
Madam Chair, it's just a matter of house cleaning, because it's a nonprofit organization. And as long as we still have a member sitting on the board, an acting member, which I believe we do, right? Are you a member of,
I am. Individual member.
an individual member?
I'm trying to determine if I should actually step aside on this one or not.
Okay, because the board's going to have to decide whether they want to continue to have a membership with White Mountain Gateway, but I would ask before Ray steps aside, if you could explain more on what the organization is about.
Yeah,
Madam Chair, I might be better served if I did step aside, and that way I could,
you can explain it.
I just feel more comfortable if I was on the other side on this discussion.
That's fine, but please do give us some information about this corporation.
When this organization was formed, I want to suggest it was back in 2001, it may have been 2000, and the initial charter was set up. One of the visions of the founders of that group was that indeed it would engage the town select board so that there was actually a board position on the governance side associated with that. During the time frame of 2005, for reasons that I would not be familiar with, there was a change in the philosophy as to the level of involvement that should occur. since 2005, there has not been a representative from the town select board that has actually been on the board of directors for this organization. This is the group that came together to try to provide the inertia for real estate development, recognizing that there had been a number of efforts over the years to try to jumpstart things in the Plymouth area, and just despite tremendous efforts and a lot of energy, there had not been any successes or outcomes as a result of White Mountain Gateway bringing together organizations like the university, the hospital. At that time, the town was actively engaged, and a number of other key players. We did develop what ultimately came about up there in Boulder Point, and working with the co-op, and the co-op put additional resources to bear, including Jim Dolly as a full-time position as Chief Operating Officer. We were able to secure additional funding efforts. They went out and engaged the Capital Development Organization down in Concord, who were very successful in Concord with economic development initiatives in that part of the state, and brought them up here to Plymouth. We were indeed working with the Grafton County Economic Development Council, but it was still in its infancies and didn't quite have the expertise or the experience to do the kind of real hands-on work that needed to be done. But the outcome of that was that we did see the Boulder Point development come to pass. We did see all of the resources. The co-op went out and got $300,000 in revolving loan fund money to help move those kind of efforts along, so it became a team effort. Since that time, the real question has been, well, what's the next step, and what's the role that White Mountain Gateway plays with the much stronger Grafton County Economic Development Council that we now have, the things that you heard about most recently with the work in downtown Plymouth. I think it would be useful to have a representative from the board that is actually part of this organization, regardless of whether they sit on the governance role or not. With that in mind, I recently paid the money to become an individual member, recognizing that it would be helpful just to have someone like myself being in the communications loop and being able to go to all their meetings, so that it would tie back to this group. I think it would be a stronger sense to actually recognize that one of the things that we all look for to help with our tax base is to drive additional economic development. And this is one of the organizations that does now have a successful track record. So I would encourage you to think about that $300, or if you perhaps want to look at some other alternative, with the recognition that I certainly am happy to provide feedback, even as an individual member, with what's going to transpire in the future with where this group goes.
What's the relationship right now with Grafton County?
There's actually cross-pollination that has taken place. On the board of White Mountain Gateway, the executive director, which you met, Mark Scarano, he sits on their board now, so that the planning effort, we're trying to bring that afoot. Ed Wixon is currently the chair of White Mountain Gateway, and we all know, those of us who've been with Ed recognize that gentleman has a great vision and a great way of articulating and making things happen in this town. So they got good leadership at the top part of the organization. I would think that it would be better for us to actually be in on the ground floor at the board level. My understanding is that should we come back in and continue with the $300, that would open up a board seat to actually be part of the governance of that organization.
And we have been part of this organization now for 2 years?
Actually, I have been, if you will, the co-ops.
No, this talks about the town. This records indicate this would be our third payment.
Yes.
And that's the part, that's why I did not sign off on this, because we have not made any payments.
Yeah. My understanding was that there hadn't been anything done since 2005. That's
Right.
my understanding, in talking with Sharon Yenton, who's the secretary of this. So it's the first time I had seen this was this evening.
Which is why I couldn't sign off on it, because it said we've been making annual payments, but I didn't have any line to apply this to, because we have at least not made any payments in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find any history on why. Why we stopped making payments, or if we had, I could only go back 5 years.
I'd offer an alternative. I'd love to see us back in there because I think it would serve us well in the long term, but in the interest of exploring this, I'd be happy to report back on a periodic basis on how this organization is moving forward with the understanding that you may consider in the future jumping back in. So I won't be at the board level, I'll just be a member who's able to attend those meetings. Pardon?
Ed Wixon is a board member.
He's the chair of the board.
Chair. I think it'd be useful to have him, to talk to him about the vision, just because it does feel like, Grafton County Economic Development just made a partnership with the incubator effort at PSU, and so it's hard to figure out, are we, I guess, more is more maybe, but with so many efforts going, where's the joint mission as far as this town goes? I know Ed, and I'd love to hear Ed sort of lay out a vision that...
It's always good to listen to that gentleman.
Yeah. So maybe we could put him on a future agenda.
That would be good, and just get some additional information about how they think this is going to impact Plymouth from now on.
On the interim, I'll certainly check into it and have Mrs. Yetton get back to you about the language that was used on here, to make sure we have clarity associated with the document.
I think we did contact Mrs. Yetton and confirm the fact that we didn't, we haven't paid since 2005.
So obviously, it comes down to a typo. It's probably a little simplistic.
Whether we want to join them.
A misstatement.
Right.
Thank you for listening.
Good.
Moving on to other business, Sandra Jones from the Plymouth Area Renewable Energy Initiative regarding sign posting.
Good evening.
Sandra.
I spoke with Brian McCarthy. I believe he gave you some information maybe at your last meeting about this project. Should I bring you up to speed again?
Bring us up to speed again.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Last fall, we worked with the Rotary Club and a number of other businesses in town to put up the solar electric panel on the Riverside Park Pavilion. New Hampshire Electric Co-op was one of our partners, as well as Meredith Village Savings Bank, Mockley Electric. A whole slew of folks came together to help us with this educational project. So part of the project is we wanted to put an educational sign. If you can see the picture here of the pavilion, about 10 feet to the side of it is a tree, and we're thinking of, we'd like to put the sign on a 4x4 post in the same line as the tree, so the setback would be the same as far as when they're pushing snow. They can't push it beyond the tree, so we thought if we put the sign in the same line, that way that would work well. But it'll sit, this will be a wooden, this is the actual sign. It'll be framed with wood on a 4x4 post that looks similar to the wood that the pavilion was made of. And it'll face the pavilion just like this, looking at the solar panel. And it's our hope that it'll help educate residents about solar energy and
Same
encourage them.
size. That's the exact
That's
size.
the exact poster. Just so you know, Megaprints has a new way of printing. It's that was very inexpensive. It's waterproof, and if we need to replace it, if it gets hurt in any way, we can replace it very easily.
That'd be like in a glass, or a glass.
We were thinking we could put it on glass, but we're afraid it will get foggy, and glass can get as easily scratched as that can. So we're willing to replace it if it gets vandalized. We're afraid with the glass, it just makes it harder to read. But we're willing to be flexible. Oh, okay. We're actually thinking, we're actually thinking of, and I appreciate your input on this, we're thinking of making the sign facing the pavilion, but it may be more appropriate to face it towards the road.
I've got these in our...
That's kind of a Photoshop sign there.
It looks nice there.
So you're talking about rotating it.
The thought there was that as you're reading it, you can look up and see the panel, but it's actually kind of perhaps a silly reason for having it that way, and perhaps we should go back to our original idea of making it so people can see it from the road and maybe get them to stop and look at it.
Look at it, yeah.
This is going to weather the storms, etc.?
They say it will. It's UV rated, waterproof. It's their newest and latest product, so we'll give it a try. But we're willing to try it out and replace it if it doesn't hold up. But I was hoping, if possible, to get approval tonight because we'd like to have it up by the duck derby, which I think will give it its best chance to be read between now and...
It's going to be mounted on some sort
It'll be mounted on a 4x4 post.
I move that we approve the, going forward with PAREI posting a freestanding sign.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved by Darrell, seconded by Ray.
In discussion here, did Brian have anything?
Yes.
Okay. What did, Brian said it was
Right.
fine.
You meant Brian Murphy in the beginning, right?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Well, Brian said everything was, okay. Very good. All right.
So moved by Darrell, seconded by Ray. All those in favor of approving this sign?
Aye.
Opposed?
Very good.
Thank you.
Good to go.
It's our goal to get it up by the weekend.
All right. It's gonna look
Thank
good.
you. All right, any unfinished business? No? Any public comment?
Does the public have anything to say?
Public have no comment. All right, I do have a request that we go into a non-public session in accordance with RSA 91-A:3, 2, C, reputation. So, do I have a motion that we go?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we go into a non-public session. All those in favor? Charlie?
Aye.
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 All right. Non-public.